So at long last, Gal Gadot has been asked, why did Snow White flop so badly? And instead of, giving some sort of studio-approved, PR, media-trained answer as to why it underperformed, or even instead of throwing her co-star Rachel Zegler under the bus, which she would rightfully deserve, Gal Gadot instead has a theory that anti-Semitism is to blame.
I always suspected.
Yeah, because she's Israeli and a Zionist, and Rachel Zegler is pro-Palestine, outspokenly so. That had something to do with people boycotting Snow White, and that's why it flopped at the box office. This is a comment that she gave on a recent appearance on an Israeli TV program called The A-Talks. This is crazy, a premise for the show in which guests are interviewed by individuals on the autism spectrum. So just no tact whatsoever.
Remember earlier when I said that the media's always been evil?
This is a crazy idea for a talk show, but here's why that happened. They just didn't think of a way to ask her this in a media-trained perspective.
אני חייבת להגיד לך קודם כל.
They're not going to be able to. I was going to say.
We have to give the translation.
Yeah. So do you want to just read
Sure.
it? Like, because I was to say earlier when you sent me this, I'm like, we're going to make him listen to it in Hebrew.
I didn't even know that she spoke Hebrew.
Read the translation.
She said, this happens a lot in various industries, including Hollywood. There is pressure on celebrities to speak out against Israel. And it happened. I can always explain and try to give context about what's happening here, and I always do that. But in the end, people make their own decisions, and I was disappointed that the movie was incredibly affected by all of that, and that it didn't do well at the box office, but that's how it goes. You win some, you lose some. And she also gave some follow-up comments on her Instagram over the weekend, clarifying that
Before we do that, we need to bring back you win some, you lose some. You don't hear that much these days.
I hear it.
It's a zero-sum game for most people. Bring back you win some, you lose some. I appreciate that.
She clarified that Snow White didn't fail solely because of external pressures. She said, I was honored to join an extraordinary interview with the inspiring interviewers whose questions go straight to the heart. Sometimes we respond to questions from an emotional place. When the film came out, I felt that those who are against Israel criticized me in a very personal, almost visceral way. They saw me first and foremost as an Israeli, not as an actress. That's the perspective I spoke from when I answered the question. Of course, the film didn't fail solely because of external pressures. There are many factors that determine why a film succeeds or fails, and success is never guaranteed.
So, this is just what happens when you're in your own little personal bubble. Not even like a political bubble, but just like she's only taking in the information of what happened to her, not really looking at the whole picture, which is interesting because you'd think that like at a certain point they would maybe she's just so unproblematic to them that they didn't have to have any of these conversations with her. But you'd think with all of the backlash that Rachel Zegler was getting at the time that they would have tried to get everybody together and be like, look, we need to shore up this media tour. We need to go out here and get everybody on the same page. But Gal Gadot was in a very different place than Rachel Zegler when the movie was being promoted, because they were sending Rachel Zegler out to like sing at castles and basically do anything but talk.
Right.
And Gal Gadot was allowed to just do her own thing. She got her star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. She was getting awards for combating anti-Semitism, and there wasn't a whole lot of media hoopla around it because they didn't care, because Rachel Zegler's story got more clicks, was far more interesting, and formed a narrative that was much, much simpler for people to follow. And for the lack of better words, it was a sexier narrative than the Israel-Palestine conflict. It was like, look at this woman. They can still include it in the Rachel Zegler part because she did have her own political comments, and they did try to frame her statements on Palestine as the reason people were upset, even though we understand that it went all the way back to 2022 and D23 and the comments that she made about the original Snow White movie.
Right. It was very deceptive the way that it was covered up into the release. Gal Gadot's take is a Delulu one, that's for sure.
I don't even think it's Delulu. I think she's just, you're colored by your own experience and you don't think much about the world outside of what's happening to you.
Gal Gadot is living in an echo chamber, and Rachel Zegler is also living in her own echo chamber.
Only we could have put them together,
and the journalists,
and they could have bounced off each other.
The journalists covering Snow White as well are also in their own echo chamber, and the way that they were deceptively framing the release for Snow White was people are boycotting it because Rachel Zegler is talking about Palestine when that had nothing to do with it. And
I mean, it didn't help, but it wasn't the driving force of why she was already extremely unlikable.
It was the things that she was saying about the original Snow White. It was her feminist statements, and it was her statements about Trump supporters never knowing peace. Mm-hmm. Honestly, none of it had to do with her pro-Palestine takes. Nobody cared. It got barely any attention other than from journalists. And Gal Gadot probably was personally offended that Rachel Zegler said those things because she's passionately pro-Israel.
In the chat, Easy says it's Gadot, Mary, not Gadot. No, it's not. Go back and listen to any clip of her saying her own name. She pronounces the T. It's Gadot.
Right. I don't know why this is so controversial.
It's every single time.
It's Gadot.
There was a time when I put together a supercut of all the times she said her own name, and nobody listens.
And even the part of the media that's more sympathetic to Rachel Zegler is blaming the Snow White failure on Gal Gadot's acting.
Yeah,
which is also not true. This post from Discussing Film says Gal Gadot claims that Snow White flopped because of the pressure on celebrities to bring up things against Israel rather than her terrible acting. Her terrible acting. I mean, she was a terrible actress in the movie.
Yes, but everybody knows that that's cope.
But
Gal Gadot is coping. So is Discussing. That's what I said on X. I said, yes, Gal Gadot is absolutely coping. Discussing Film is also coping. It's one big cope fest.
I mean, Gal Gadot's acting.
They should move to Copenhagen.
Was awful, and like she's notoriously not a good actress. And she gets clowned on all the time for it, but her acting would be immaterial to the performance of the movie had Rachel Zegler not made it crash and burn in the first place. There was also, even before the Palestine stuff, another fake controversy about Rachel Zegler being Hispanic, which, again, was never the main focus of the backlash, too. That was also a lie from the media. I did want to show these skits that were making fun of Gal Gadot's performance, though, because they were getting a lot of attention at the time.
Why don't you take a bite, Snow White? I have immortal longings in me. Go on.
I like the clip that always gets reposted from Justice League where she's like, halal, no.
Speak up! Pies are luxuries. They don't need luxuries. It confuses them. I don't remember you being this opinionated.
I mean, there was two versions of that. They actually remixed that clip and used a different take for one of the trailers where they did the slightly less awful version of opinionated.
All is fair when you're the fairest of them all. Snow White, get out of my way. Remove his coat and bind his gates to the breeze. Remove his coat and bind his boots to the freezing gates. Remove his coat and boots and bind him to the gates to freeze. In fact, I find it quite amusing telling me to play nice. In fact, I find it quite amusing for them to telling me to play nice.
They should have dubbed her with an actual singer. She's not good at singing either. And there was also this other skit from the same person about just like her acting in general.
She kind of looks like her in a.
I see a resemblance.
Yeah,
definitely.
She's got some
same
similar
voice
facial
too.
features. I mean, I'm assuming she's putting the voice on.
But the tone of voice too, not just the accent.
Lord.
We find out later she's her stand-in, for setting.
She was the one that
she hated her all the time.
She was the one that recorded the opinionated for the movie.
She's like, why did they dunk on me for that? That was great.
You're putting yourself and everyone in grave danger. I need you to give me the stone and enough champagne to fill the Nile. Mirror, mirror, magic mirror, who is the fairest of them all?
She looks just like her there.
The way that she's mugging at the camera.
She's got the same mouth as Gal Gadot.
It is our sacred duty, and I'm going to help them. Hell no!
Matt Kal-El, no.
No.
Look, Gal Gadot is she's perfectly fine for Fast and the Furious movies. As such, she was in some of the earlier films. She's fine in movies like Red Notice, which is still what I realized yesterday. Still the most watched movie ever on Netflix.
Oh wow!
When the script doesn't demand much of her, I think she's perfectly fine. But when she gets the leading role, she was in that movie Heart of Stone, which I made it through about 20 minutes of, and then I'm like, I tapped out. I was like, I gotta go. Even me, the lover of all Hollywood garbage, couldn't sit through Heart of Stone.
Look, it's just...
And the movie was going to flop anyways.
Right. It's annoying that the media still this far out from Snow White still can't acknowledge what really happened.
They cannot.
They just can't actually report on anything. Not a surprise, actually, from journalists, but you're going to blame it on the race swap. On Rachel Zegler being Colombian. You're going to blame it on her comments about Palestine. You're going to blame it on misogyny.
Yep.
Instead of just reporting what actually happened. It never had a single thing to do with anyone's stance on Israel.
Nope.
That was so ridiculous. And there was one particular journalist at Variety named Tatiana Siegel.
I remember she's
took aim at
over
Rachel
there,
Zegler for her comments about Palestine and really wanted to sell the narrative that people were boycotting Snow White over it. That's not true.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.